Most people don't know that in about the early 20th century, there were about 13,000 antelope left in the continental United States. That's amazing. They were almost gone. The Boone and Crockett Club thought they would be gone early on. But thanks to sportsmen getting together and saying, wait a second, we have to protect this species, we created the North American model for wildlife conservation. What that means is sportsmen act as a constituency fighting for each species. As part of this model, sportsmen pay into the Pittman-Robertson tax. That's a tax on our firearms, our ammunition, and is another tax associated with that on our archery tackle. That money gets sent to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, where it's reapportioned back to the states depending on the number of hunters each state has. There's a formula they use to put that money back into the states where it has to be used for wildlife conservation projects. So it's used to benefit these wildlife populations that we have. And that's true for whitetails, true for elk, and yes, it's true for antelope. Sportsmen, meanwhile, act as a constituency fighting for these wildlife species, and antelope is no exception. Sportsmen want there to be healthy populations of wildlife, not too many, because they'll overbrowse and impact the habitat and actually create an unhealthy system that'll affect a species across that ecosystem. So wildlife biologists in each state decide the number of tags issued to control the populations. Sportsmen then come in and by paying for their licenses and paying those taxes on their guns and ammo, fund that conservation model. Meanwhile, local ranchers and landowners love this because they have an economic incentive to have healthy wildlife populations on their property. This is so because hunters hire outfitters like they're placed around here in eastern Colorado to come in and hunt those antelope. And they want to shoot big antelope or they want to shoot big whitetails. Sometimes they get a hard time from non-hunters for that reason. But actually, there's a good reason for that. If you're seeing big animals on a property, that says that herd is healthy. The habitat is healthy, the herd isn't diseased, they're not malnutritioned, they're a healthy wildlife population. That's what an outfitter wants to see, that's what a rancher wants to see, that's what wildlife biologists want to see, and yes, that's what hunters want to see. That's why it's important for people to remember that every species, as I say, lucky enough to have a hunting season on it, has always increased in number after that season was placed on that species. That's because you have a constituency of hunters fighting for that species. You have wildlife biologists caretaking for that species. You have hunters paying through the license fees and the taxes on their sporting goods for that species. It all works together to help that species become healthy and to grow and to be where it should in the habitat. That's the North American wildlife conservation model at work. It has saved waterfowl, it has saved whitetails, it has saved elk, and yes, it saved antelope thanks to American hunters.